She was 60 years old, a mother, a career woman, and someone who thought love was something reserved for the past. After years of raising children, building her career, and living a life of routine, she had put the idea of romance behind her. But what if everything she knew about love was about to change? What if the secret to reigniting her love life was hidden in something as simple as the first moments of the day? One morning, as the sun streamed through the window, something unexpected happened. She noticed a change, something she hadn't felt in years. A shift in her mind, in her heart. She looked in the mirror and realized she wasn't the same woman anymore. Something inside her had awakened. And that day she made a decision. A decision that would lead her to something no one could have predicted. She didn't just want to live the rest of her life coasting through. She was ready to rediscover herself, to embrace the unknown and most unexpectedly. Maybe, just maybe, love again. The thing was, she wasn't alone in this journey. He was a younger man, someone who saw something in her that took her by surprise. How? What was the secret to this unlikely connection? How did this 60-year-old woman reignite the spark in her love life? Well, it all started with 5 small habits. Habits she began each morning. You won't believe how these 5 little changes set off a chain reaction that would forever alter the course of her life. But here's the thing. These habits didn't just make her more appealing. They made her feel alive again. They gave her back something she didn't even realize she was missing. Stay with me, because in the next part, you'll find out exactly how this simple routine transformed everything. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll see that it's never too late to find love, or to rediscover the love for yourself. It wasn't long before she realized that her mornings could be the key to everything. There was something special about those first moments after waking up. A sacred space where everything felt possible. That's when she made a decision, one that would forever change her life. She wasn't just going to drag herself through the day anymore, merely existing. No, she was going to embrace each day, starting with the smallest moments. She knew it was time for a shift. She began waking up just a little earlier than usual. It wasn't much, just 30 minutes. But in that time she allowed herself to breathe, to think, to feel. The world was quieter then, and there was a certain kind of magic in the stillness of the morning. She started by making herself a cup of tea, something simple but comforting. She used to rush through her mornings trying to get everything in order, constantly thinking about the tasks ahead. But now, she sat down and allowed herself to truly savor the tea. She allowed herself to take in the warmth, the aroma, and the moment. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the rush of the day pulling at her. She just sat there, letting her thoughts wander, feeling grateful for the peace. But it wasn't just the tea. It was the space she created for herself, the time she gave herself to just be. In the past, she had been so caught up in caring for others, making sure everyone around her was taken care of, that she forgot how to nurture herself. But now, with this quiet morning routine, she started to reconnect with herself. She remembered the woman she used to be. The woman full of dreams, curiosity, and passion. That woman was still inside her. It was just waiting to be awakened. She started incorporating small stretches, little movements to ease the stiffness that had become second nature. Her body was not what it used to be, but the aches and pains weren't something she feared anymore. She moved slowly with purpose, allowing her body to stretch, breathe, and awaken alongside her mind. With each stretch, she felt the tension from the day before loosen, and with each breath, she felt a sense of calm she hadn't experienced in a long time. First, it felt awkward. She wasn't used to prioritizing herself, to taking the time to care for her own body without guilt. But soon it became a routine she looked forward to. It wasn't about getting fit or losing weight, though both things were happening naturally. It was about connecting with herself in a way she hadn't allowed herself to for years. The more she did this, the more she noticed something incredible. She felt more alive. She felt more herself. And then she added another habit. She started writing. Just a few lines each morning, jotting down her thoughts, her dreams, her hopes for the day. It was a form of release, a way to clear the mental clutter that had always filled her mind. She used to believe journaling was for people who had time, who were organized or mindful. But now she realized that writing wasn't about perfection, it was about expression. And in expressing herself, she started to see things in a new light. She realized how much she had been holding inside. Hopes, dreams, fears, regrets. It was all there on the page, and for the first time she allowed herself to release it. The simple act of writing opened something inside her. It was as if the process itself unlocked a door to a part of herself that had been dormant for years. She didn't just write about her daily tasks. She wrote about her desires, her fears, the things she was afraid to admit even to herself. And in doing so, she started to understand herself more deeply. The woman who had spent so many years trying to fit into a mold, trying to be what others expected her to be, was now stepping into her own light. But there was more to it than just the routine. She began to notice the world around her in a way she hadn't before. The sunlight streaming through the window, the soft hum of the birds outside, the rhythm of the day beginning to unfold. All of it felt different. It wasn't just the routine she was cultivating. It was a way of seeing the world. She was rediscovering the beauty in the simplest moments. She wasn't rushing through her mornings anymore. She was present in them, and it made all the difference. Her relationships with those around her also began to shift. She wasn't as quick to react, as quick to get frustrated. She learned to take a deep breath, to pause before responding. She had more patience, more kindness, not just for others but for herself. She realized that she had spent so many years being hard on herself, not allowing herself to make mistakes or to feel imperfect. But now she was learning to accept herself in all her complexities. One morning, after a few weeks of this new routine, she went out to the local cafe to grab her usual coffee. She wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary, but when she walked in, she saw him. The younger man. He was sitting at a corner table, his laptop open, headphones on. She hadn't noticed him before, but today for some reason he caught her eye. She tried not to stare, but she couldn't help herself. There was something about him, something intriguing. He looked up and their eyes met. There was a brief moment of hesitation, as if both of them were trying to figure out if they should acknowledge the connection. But then he smiled. It wasn't just a polite smile. It was warm, genuine, as if he knew something she didn't. He stood up and approached her. "Excuse me," he said with a smile, "but I couldn't help but notice. I see you here every morning, and you always seem so calm, so at peace. I'd love to know your secret." Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected to be noticed, especially by someone so much younger. But somehow in that moment, she felt a spark of something she hadn't felt in years. They talked. It was natural, easy, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was pretending to be something she wasn't. She was just herself, the woman who had made small changes, who had begun to prioritize her own happiness, her own well-being. And somehow, in doing that, she had become someone he was genuinely interested in. It wasn't just about the physical attraction. There was something more. There was a connection, a shared understanding, a recognition that they were both searching for something more, something real. That day marked the beginning of something unexpected, something she hadn't even dared to imagine a few months ago. The woman who had once given up on love was now rediscovering it, not because she was chasing after it, but because she had allowed herself to simply be. And as the days went by, she realized that it wasn't about finding someone else to complete her. It was about finding the parts of herself she had forgotten. It was about waking up each morning with a sense of purpose, of peace, and of possibility. And in that space, love found her in a way she least expected. It was a few days after their unexpected meeting at the cafe that she found herself thinking about him more than she cared to admit. At first, she dismissed it as a fleeting moment, something that would fade as quickly as it had arrived. But it didn't fade. Instead, it lingered like a melody stuck in her head. She found herself replaying the conversation in her mind, analyzing every word, every smile, every glance they had shared. She wasn't sure what had drawn her to him. Perhaps it was his confidence, the ease with which he spoke, or maybe it was the genuine curiosity in his eyes. Whatever it was, it left her with a feeling she hadn't had in years. It left her with a spark. She had spent so many years focusing on being a mother, a professional, and someone who held everything together, that she had forgotten how to embrace the side of her that was open to love, to connection, to something more. But now with him, it felt like that side of her was coming back to life. He had shown her something that had been buried deep within her. A desire to connect, to experience life with someone in a way that was raw, real, and not tainted by the expectations of age or societal norms. But she wasn't foolish. She knew the world would judge her for it. A woman of her age dating a man younger than her? People would talk. They always did. It wasn't the first time she had heard the whispers. Too old, they would say. She's past her prime. And while the outside world might think it was strange, or even inappropriate, something inside her told her to ignore the noise. The truth was, she was tired of living her life based on other people's judgments. She was done letting other people dictate her happiness. And yet, despite this newfound freedom, she hesitated. Was she really ready to take the leap? To open herself up to a relationship that was so unconventional? She had to be honest with herself. She had been hurt before, scarred by relationships that had left their mark. She had spent so many years focusing on her children, her career, her responsibilities, that love had almost become an afterthought. But now, with him, it felt different. It felt real. But was it enough? The following morning, she woke up as usual, earlier than she had to. She went through her morning routine. The cup of tea, the stretches, the journaling. But this time there was something else. A quiet sense of excitement fluttered in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to see where this could go. She couldn't keep pretending that she didn't feel something. It was time to stop denying it. But even as she made that decision, doubts crept in. What would he think? Was he really interested in her? Or was it just a passing infatuation? She couldn't shake the feeling that he saw something in her that others didn't. But what if it was just an illusion? The next time she saw him at the cafe, she felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. She had come to terms with her feelings, but now it was time to find out if those feelings were shared. Would he be as eager to see her again? Or had their brief conversation been nothing more than a fleeting connection? When she walked in, there he was, sitting at his usual spot by the window. He looked up as she entered, and for a moment their eyes met, an unspoken understanding passing between them. She felt her heart race, but she steadied herself. This was it. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment she had been secretly hoping for. He smiled at her, and that was all it took. She knew that this wasn't just a chance encounter. It wasn't just a fling. This was something more. They began to talk again, picking up right where they had left off, as if no time had passed at all. But this time the conversation was deeper, more intimate. They spoke about their dreams, their fears, and their experiences. He asked her questions about her life, her past, and she found herself answering honestly, openly, without hesitation. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the need to hide behind a facade. She was simply herself, unapologetically herself. As the conversation flowed, she realized something important. It wasn't just the physical attraction that made this connection unique. It was the emotional bond they were beginning to build. They understood each other in a way that transcended age, experience, and all the external factors that might have once seemed like obstacles. The truth was, they connected on a deeper level. They were both searching for something more than just surface-level companionship. They wanted real connection, real intimacy, and the possibility of something lasting. But still, doubts lingered. Could she really open herself up to this? Was it even possible to start something with someone so much younger, when the world might never understand? The questions swirled in her mind, but each time she looked at him, she realized something profound. It didn't matter. What mattered was how she felt in that moment. What mattered was the connection they were building, the joy they found in each other's company. And most importantly, it was about her rediscovering herself, the woman who had almost given up on love, who had almost convinced herself that it was too late, only to realize that it was never too late at all. As they talked, she felt a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in years. Maybe it wasn't about finding a perfect relationship, or fitting into a mold that society had created. Maybe it was about embracing the unexpected, about allowing herself to feel alive again, no matter her age. And in that moment, she knew that this wasn't just about him. It was about her. It was about reclaiming her right to love, to connect, and to live fully. When it was time to leave, they exchanged numbers, and as she walked out of the cafe, she couldn't help but smile to herself. She wasn't sure where this was going, but for the first time in a long time, she was excited about the possibility. For the first time in years, she felt alive, and that was a feeling she never wanted to lose again. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She was ready to find out. She had opened herself to love again. And that was the first step in creating a new chapter in her life. One that was full of possibility, joy, and connection. And perhaps, just perhaps, this was only the beginning. It wasn't long before their conversations became more frequent, more intimate. What had started as a casual chat at the cafe turned into something deeper, something unexpected. She found herself waking up each day with a sense of anticipation, wondering when she would see him again, what they would talk about, how their connection would evolve. The doubts that had once clouded her mind, about age, about society's expectations, began to fade. In their shared moments, those worries felt irrelevant, almost trivial. For the first time in a long time, she felt seen and understood in ways she had almost forgotten were possible. He was different. There was something about the way he looked at her, something sincere and present. He wasn't caught up in the expectations that so many others were, expectations that told her she was too old for this, too experienced for that. With him, none of that mattered. He was fascinated by her life, her wisdom, her experiences. He didn't see her as an older woman or someone who was past her prime. He saw her for who she truly was. A woman with a rich history. A woman who had lived, who had learned, and who was now open to exploring something new. She had to admit that she was falling for him. But what did that mean? Could someone like her, with all the baggage of past relationships and a lifetime of responsibilities, really build something meaningful with someone so much younger? At first, she had told herself that it was just a passing fling, a brief escape from the monotony of everyday life. But now, with each conversation, with each passing moment, she realized that it was more than that. But with this growing connection came the inevitable questioning. Was she ready for this? Was she really prepared to open herself up to someone so young, someone who might one day look at her and realize they were in different places in life? What if it didn't work? What if, in the end, all the doubts she had fought so hard to push away came rushing back? She couldn't deny the attraction. It wasn't just physical, though that was certainly there. It was emotional, intellectual, and yes, there was something undeniably thrilling about the newness of it all. But more than anything, she realized that this was more than a relationship with him. It was about rediscovering herself. She was starting to feel alive in a way she hadn't in years. The confidence, the passion, the curiosity, it was all coming back to her. The next time they met, they spent hours together, talking about everything and nothing. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, as if they had known each other for years. And in those moments, she began to feel something she hadn't expected. A sense of comfort. It was as if the years of emotional walls she had built around herself were slowly crumbling. With him, she could be vulnerable. She could be real. They talked about their pasts, about his youth, about her experiences. She found herself laughing, genuinely laughing, in a way she hadn't in a long time. He didn't make her feel self-conscious about her age or her past. He didn't try to fix her or make her feel like she had to be something she wasn't. He accepted her. Flaws, imperfections, and all. And that was a gift she hadn't realized she needed so desperately. But the reality of their situation couldn't be ignored forever. As the relationship grew, so did the external pressures. She began to feel the weight of society's judgments. People would talk, she knew that. The whispers would start, the raised eyebrows, the comments about how she was settling or trying to relive her youth. But none of that mattered. Not anymore. The truth was, she wasn't afraid of what others thought. She had spent too many years trying to please everyone else, trying to live by rules that didn't serve her, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't hers. This was her life. This was her journey. And for once, she wasn't going to let anything or anyone dictate her happiness. But the pressure came from within too. Could this really last? Could she see herself in a long-term relationship with him? She had lived a full life, one that had taken her down many paths. Was she ready to give herself over to someone again? Was she ready to risk her heart after all these years? One evening, after another long conversation with him, she went home and sat alone in her living room, thinking. She hadn't expected to be here. She hadn't expected to feel so open, so connected, so ready to take a chance on love again. She thought about the life she had built, the walls she had erected to protect herself, the emotional armor she had worn for so long. And now, standing on the precipice of something new, she had to decide if she was willing to let all of that go. The truth was, she didn't have all the answers. She didn't know what the future would hold. She didn't know if this relationship would last, or if it was just a chapter in her life, a beautiful fleeting chapter that would eventually come to an end. But she knew one thing for certain. She was ready to take the risk. She was ready to open her heart again, to embrace love, even if it was complicated, even if it was unconventional. Because what she had learned, what she was still learning, was that love wasn't about age or perfection. It wasn't about fitting into someone else's idea of what a relationship should look like. Love was about connection. It was about vulnerability. It was about being open to the unknown and allowing yourself to experience joy, passion, and growth, no matter where you were in life. And so, as she stood there in the quiet of her living room, she made a choice. She wasn't going to let fear hold her back anymore. She wasn't going to let doubts control her. She was going to embrace the present, with all its uncertainties, and trust that whatever happened, it would be worth it. The next time she saw him, she didn't hold back. She allowed herself to feel everything, the excitement, the nervousness, the joy. She was ready to give herself fully to this moment, to this connection, to whatever it might become. And for the first time in years, she felt completely alive. The following days seemed to stretch out like a series of small, beautiful moments strung together. Every morning as she went through her routine, her tea, her stretches, her journaling, she felt a quiet joy blooming within her. It wasn't the kind of joy that was loud or flashy. It wasn't the kind of joy that demanded attention. It was subtle, steady, and deep. And it had everything to do with the fact that she was finally living for herself, fully and unapologetically. She no longer felt the need to hide behind the veil of self-doubt. Each morning, she woke up knowing that she had made the choice to live authentically. It was a quiet rebellion against age, against expectations, against the judgments of others. And she found herself becoming stronger, more confident, with each passing day. But there was something else happening, something she hadn't expected. The relationship with him, the younger man, wasn't just about companionship. It wasn't just about intimacy. It was about rediscovering her own capacity to give love and to receive it. And as their connection deepened, she realized that she wasn't just loving him. She was loving herself in ways she hadn't known were possible. She was learning to let go of old fears, old pains that had kept her from fully embracing life. And with each touch, each conversation, each moment shared, she felt those fears and pains slowly dissolve. But it wasn't easy. Love never was. It wasn't always perfect. There were moments of doubt, moments when she questioned whether this was truly the right path. There were times when the world outside tried to creep in, reminding her of the barriers they faced. The age difference, the judgments, the expectations. Could they really make it work? Could this love last? The thought of those external pressures weighed on her. But as time passed, she began to realize something important. Those pressures didn't matter. What mattered was what they shared in those quiet moments between the two of them. What mattered was the trust they had built, the understanding they had nurtured. It wasn't about fitting into a predefined box. It was about carving out their own path, one where love could exist in its own unique way. One evening they sat together talking about everything and nothing. They had spent hours together like they always did. But this time, something felt different. The conversation had shifted. It was deeper, more vulnerable. He shared something with her that she hadn't expected. Something that made her realize just how much she had touched his life, just how much their connection meant to him. "I never expected this," he said, his voice quiet. "When I first saw you, I didn't know what to think. You were older than me. I didn't know if you'd even look at me the way I looked at you. But the more I've gotten to know you, the more I realize that age doesn't mean anything. It's you, your spirit, your kindness, the way you make me feel. You've opened me up in ways I didn't think were possible." Her heart swelled with warmth at his words, and for the first time in a long time, she felt seen in a way that was beyond surface-level attraction. It wasn't about appearances. It was about who they were as people, about the connection they shared. The thought that they were able to build something so deep, so real, filled her with a sense of fulfillment she hadn't realized she was missing. And then she looked at him, her voice soft but steady. "You've taught me something I didn't know I needed to learn. That it's okay to love myself, to embrace who I am, no matter what anyone else thinks. And I'm starting to realize that it's okay to love you too, without the fears, without the doubts." He smiled at her then, a smile that was full of understanding, of acceptance. It wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about making anyone else understand. It was just about them, two people building something together in their own way. But as they moved forward, she still couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. There were times when she felt like they were on the brink of something extraordinary, but something deep inside still held her back. She couldn't help but wonder if the love they had built would be enough to stand the test of time. Would it be enough when the world around them inevitably tried to intervene? But in the quiet moments, those moments when she was alone with her thoughts, she realized that the answer didn't lie in anyone else's approval. It didn't lie in societal norms or expectations. It lay in their hearts, in their shared moments, in the ways they loved each other. It wasn't about whether others understood their connection. It was about the depth of the bond they had built, the way they made each other feel. With that realization, she let go of the final pieces of doubt that had been holding her back. She wasn't going to worry about what the future held. She wasn't going to let the whispers of the outside world dictate her happiness. She had found something real, something beautiful, and she was going to cherish it for as long as it lasted. And then she felt a shift within herself. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about her. She had spent so many years being defined by the roles she played: mother, professional, caretaker. But now she was finally starting to define herself by who she truly was, by what made her feel alive. It wasn't about fitting into someone else's expectations. It was about living on her own terms, loving on her own terms. When she looked at him, she saw not just a man she cared about, but a partner in every sense of the word. Someone who made her feel seen, understood, and loved. She realized that love wasn't about finding someone to complete you. It was about finding someone who would stand beside you as you both learned and grew together. And so, in that moment, she made a promise to herself. No matter what the future held, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would continue to live her truth. She would continue to love herself, to embrace the love that had come into her life, and to walk forward with an open heart, knowing that the journey, no matter how uncertain, was always worth it. This love, this rediscovery of herself, was just the beginning. And as she moved forward, she knew one thing for sure. She was ready for whatever came next. Because love at any age was always worth the leap. The days flowed seamlessly one after the other, as she continued to embrace the new rhythms of her life. Her mornings were still sacred, those quiet moments of reflection, of tea, of stretching her body and mind. But now they were infused with a new sense of anticipation, a spark that came not just from the joy of self-care, but from the love that was quietly blossoming in her life. It wasn't the chaotic, passionate love she'd read about in novels, nor was it the quiet, companionable love that came with years of marriage. No, it was something entirely different. A love built on mutual respect, deep understanding, and an openness to the unknown. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized that this love wasn't just about the connection between her and him. It wasn't even just about rediscovering herself, though that was a huge part of it. This love was a revelation about life itself, about the unexpected, uncharted territory that we all can step into at any age if we are willing to embrace it. She had spent so many years thinking that love, that connection, was something that only belonged in the past, that it was reserved for the younger versions of herself. But now she knew differently. Love wasn't just a destination, it was a journey, one that could take you in any direction at any stage of your life. Still, as much as she knew she had made the right choice in allowing herself to love again, doubts occasionally surfaced. Not about him, not about their connection, but about the future. She had seen relationships fade, had witnessed the passage of time take its toll on even the strongest of connections. What would happen when the novelty wore off? What would happen when the inevitable struggles of life tested their bond? And more importantly, would their connection still matter when the world around them tried to make them feel like their love was somehow wrong or impossible? But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that it wasn't about the future. It wasn't about the years ahead or the judgments of others. It was about the now, the present, the way she felt when he smiled at her, when they shared a quiet moment, when they touched hands for the first time. Those were the moments that mattered. And in those moments she had everything she needed. Their time together continued to evolve. Their relationship grew in ways neither of them had expected. They began to experience life through each other's eyes, her the wisdom and experience of years lived fully, him the fresh perspective and boundless energy of youth. They laughed together, shared stories, and learned from each other. There was no pressure, no expectations about what it should be. They simply allowed each other the freedom to be who they were, to experience life without constraints, without worrying about what others might think. Her friends and family, however, were a different story. At first, they had raised eyebrows when she mentioned him. "Isn't he too young for you?" they would ask. Or, "What will people think?" But over time, they began to see the change in her. They noticed the new light in her eyes, the renewed sense of purpose in her walk, the way she spoke about her life with him. It wasn't that she was trying to convince anyone. She wasn't. It was simply that her joy, her happiness became undeniable. And slowly they began to understand. They realized that love wasn't confined by age or appearances. It was about connection, about finding someone who made your soul feel alive. And in this new chapter of her life, she had found exactly that. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, she came home to find him waiting for her. He had prepared dinner, a simple yet thoughtful gesture that always made her smile. They ate, they talked, and then as they sat together on the couch, he looked at her with a softness in his eyes that took her breath away. "I don't know what the future holds," he said quietly, "but I know I want to share it with you. No matter what happens, I want to keep discovering life with you." His words hit her like a wave, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel fully, deeply, without hesitation. There was no more room for fear, for doubt. There was only the truth of the present moment, and the realization that what they had was real. The future could wait. What mattered was the now, and in the now they were building something beautiful, something lasting, something that was entirely theirs. For her, it was a moment of profound clarity. She had spent so many years running from the idea of love, hiding behind excuses and doubts. But now she was standing in the middle of it, fully immersed, and finally ready to receive everything that it had to offer. She realized that love was not a fleeting moment, not something that came and went. It was something that could be nurtured, something that grew stronger over time, as long as both people were willing to put in the effort. And in that effort, she had found something extraordinary, something worth holding on to. In the weeks that followed, they continued to explore life together, savoring every small moment, every shared laugh, every quiet evening spent side by side. They didn't rush things. They didn't worry about what the future held. They simply lived in the present, enjoying the love they had found in each other's arms. And as she looked at him, as they shared yet another morning together, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the love that had entered her life at a time when she least expected it. Gratitude for the lessons she had learned, for the strength she had gained from allowing herself to be vulnerable, to love again. And most of all, gratitude for the freedom she had found in embracing the possibility of love, no matter her age. She had spent so many years thinking love was something only for the young, for those who hadn't experienced the weight of life yet. But now she knew better. Love, true love, didn't have an expiration date. It wasn't bound by age or circumstance. It was a force that could find its way to you at any time, in any place, if you were willing to embrace it. And so, as she sat there with him, the future seemed less important. It wasn't about what would come next. It was about the love they were building, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And in that she found peace. The love she had been searching for had found her when she least expected it. And now she was ready to hold on to it, no matter where life would take them. As the days unfolded, she found herself embracing this new chapter in her life with an open heart. The journey she had taken wasn't just about the relationship that had blossomed between her and him. It was about rediscovering who she was, about learning to love herself, and opening herself up to the unexpected joys that life had to offer. It was a reminder that no matter where you are in life, it's never too late to find happiness, to embrace love, and to take chances. Through this experience, she learned that love isn't defined by age, by what others think, or by the past. It's about connection, it's about trust, and most importantly, it's about being true to yourself. And with that lesson, she knew she had found something real, something worth fighting for. But this journey doesn't end here. There are still so many more stories to tell, more lessons to learn, and more adventures to embark on. Maybe you too are at a crossroads in your life, wondering if it's too late to start over or to take a chance on love, on yourself. Let this story be a reminder. It's never too late. The love, the happiness, and the peace you've been looking for could be just around the corner, waiting for you to take that first step. So I want to hear from you. What do you think? Do you have a story or lesson of your own that you'd like to share? Or perhaps there's a topic you'd love us to dive into next time. Something that's on your heart or something you've been curious about. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. This community is all about learning from one another and growing together. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of the inspiring content coming your way. There's so much more to explore, and I'm so excited to continue this journey with all of you. Thank you for watching, for being part of this space, and for sharing in this incredible story. Take everything you've learned today and remember, you are worthy of love, happiness, and all the incredible things life has to offer. Now go out there, embrace the possibilities, and let your own story unfold. Until next time, take care of yourself and those around you. Keep shining, and I'll see you in the next video.